All right, episode 2, Behind the Gate. How's everybody doing? Our guest today, we had a little switcheroo. We're gonna hear from our scheduled guest today in episode 4. Looking forward to that. But today we have a fill-in by the name of Todd Turner, and I'm gonna categorize him as a fill-in. And the first thing we're gonna talk about, we can get right into this, buddy. Let's talk about what happened with your hair. You know, tell us a little bit about that.
It never filled in.
Never filled in?
No, it just stayed sparse basically from my youth, just sticking in or staying in tune with being a fill-in in the world, you know. just nothing but a backup plan, and my hair it never really wanted to show up to the party.
Do you feel like that's made you more or less successful with the ladies?
Extremely successful.
Extremely, so they like it.
Because it's aerodynamic. I can move around quicker.
Aerodynamic.
I don't get slowed down.
I love that.
No, it's smooth.
All right, so Todd, I've known you for quite some time. We've worked together in the past. We got a lot of mutual friends. You have a crazy busy background. I've been able to sit down with you at times and learn a little bit about it. It's always super interesting, and I'm glad to have you on the show because I think you just have an incredible story, a diverse story. You're a teacher, you're a photographer, you're a badass real estate agent, and also have an incredible musical past, a Greensboro native. I don't know what else you've done, but let's hear about it.
I guess the only thing left out of there that was a substantial part of my life was athletics.
Athletics?
Yeah, I was a lot of people don't realize it that know me today, but in my former life, I was like the quarterback and captain of the football team, and originally went to East Carolina to play football. And then that whole jack of all trades, master of a couple thing kind of sunk in. And I just kind of realized that my brain had a little bit of positive ADD, you know?
Okay.
I don't think that's always a negative thing.
Yeah.
But I've always been interested in a little bit of everything. And I think you take that and throw it in the pot, and the recipe just kind of turns out with my life story of kind of going around doing everything. I kind of, I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, and I love their line that says, all you touch and all you see is all your life will ever be.
Okay.
And that I kind of take that to heart and dive into anything that compels me, basically.
I got you. So going back to the quarterback, would you say you're like a step above or a step below Uncle Rico?
I never got to see Uncle Rico throw the ball, so I'm not sure. But if he could throw it over the mountains, I feel like that's like Josh Allen status. So I doubt I could hang. And he definitely had better hair too, and a better mustache. But no, I mean, I was, I got recruited playing football, ironically, heavily for punting, because I punted as well, but I was really good at punting. And as a kid, I also loved to hit. I wasn't a natural quarterback. We didn't have one. So I was a good kid. I didn't get in a lot of fights or anything, but when it was all fair game on the football field, I loved contact. I like the thrill of hitting people and sometimes them hitting you, depending on how you get hit, because at quarterback you get some nasty ones. But
that goes back to you being super aerodynamic too.
Yeah. I mean, I could basically go without a helmet.
Probably pretty much.
But
yeah.
No, but I enjoyed football because of that, the contact and the sprinting and the aggression, and how it was all just okay and not frowned upon. And I didn't like the thought of punting in college. I was like, I'm a football player. I'm not a kicker, even though now with, adult hindsight, I go back in a heartbeat and sign a scholarship letter and go punt and try to make it to the league.
It's too funny. I forget who I was talking to, but they asked me the question the other day. Like, if you could play we were watching a football game, if you could play any position in the NFL, I immediately was like, I'd be the punter.
Yeah.
Like, why I would learn to just kick the shit out of the ball, get paid league minimum, and just punt the ball. Right.
The only thing about doing kicking like that in the league is a great job until you mess up one time.
Then you go.
That's it. You can go from a 500 plus K salary to unemployed in one kick.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It seems nice to think about it, but it was a big part of my life. And then, but I was also always consumed with music. So when I got like my football career at ECU lasted probably 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, and then I just kind of was obsessed with music because my first graduation or my graduation present when I graduated high school was my first drum set.
Okay.
And so, and when I got to college, you know, all of my friends that I made music with were 1 year behind me in high school. And so I stopped with the football stuff and all that and basically stopped going to class. I was just sitting in my dorm. I'd come home on the weekends to play music with them because that's all I could think about. I was completely consumed with it. And so that's where that kind of took root. And then that just, long story short, I stayed with it. I dropped out of school, stayed with music, formed a couple different bands, like emo bands and stuff, and just kind of navigating those waters and seeing what was out there, and formed a couple bands, like I said, and signed our first record deal, and eventually pushed it up to the point where I was signed to a major independent label out of Seattle called Tooth and Nail Records with my band Far Less, and toured the country for, I don't know, roughly a decade or so, and did a lot of stuff I never thought I'd do, especially when I think that's where it gets unique to think of someone who was like the captain of the high school football team is now playing indie rock all across the country, you know.
Yeah.
It's a pretty radical departure.
I feel like when you were like, that was, I feel like that genre of music, right, when you were playing too, was like really starting to gain traction.
Yeah.
On like mainstream levels. Let's pause there. Feel free to share. Don't share. I can mark this episode parental advisory, but what's, a decade of traveling, you got to have some stories. Like what's a real good story you could share with us?
There's a bunch of them.
And feel free to like name drop somebody famous that we would know and make fun of them. I would love that.
Yeah. Trying to think. I mean, there's a bunch of little stories when you're on tour. Like I remember one night we were on a Canadian tour, and we saw this like drunk party girl get hit by a car right outside. Like she just came running out of the bar like screaming like, yeah. I was like, oh.
I hate to laugh. Is she okay?
Yeah, I think she ended up being fine, but that was all of us were like, oh. And then we watched her and she started getting up, but it was like, things like that, or running into a lot of your heroes. Like I remember when we recorded our album, we went to LA and got to sing. One night we all got really drunk at this karaoke bar in Burbank called Dimples. And Dennis Haskins came in, who was Mr. Belding on Saved by the Bell.
Okay.
And if you grew up watching that show, it felt like your own principal just walked in the room,
Yeah.
And he sat with us, and we were just like chilling with Mr. Belding all night and drinking whiskey with him. And we got him at Dimples. They would film every performance, so you go up and put on like crazy outfits. I remember I had on like Viking helmet with horns coming out the side or something, and just like completely wasted on whiskey. And we sang Bohemian Rhapsody with Mr. Belding. That was really crazy. And cool we were all playing it cool, like, yeah, this is cool. And then we go get in the van after to go back to our apartment. We're like, what the hell just happened? Like, that was crazy. But yeah, a lot of stuff like that. I mean, I remember one time we stayed at a hotel once, and this guy had a peg leg with flames all over it and kept trying to knock on our door to get us to drive him to buy drugs from somebody. And we're just like, no, we're good, dude. We're going to sit in here and watch Deadliest Catch and just chill for the night. But, a lot of like odds and ends stories like that. But we definitely ran into a lot of people that I looked up to, like meeting Chino from Deftones and some of those that are like maybe not the biggest rock star in the world, but to me it was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
Who
would you say out of that genre, maybe one that people would not know of, and then one that everybody would have heard of was kind of your favorite people to either watch play live shows or tour with?
Well, Deftones are one of my all-time favorite bands, so definitely Chino was one of the bigger ones. I remember I met Steve-O like 2 days before that, and that
Okay.
was in the peak of his like drug life. He's all sober now, which is really cool to watch, by the way. But um, then smaller ones, like as far as showmen were concerned, like Anthony Green is one that maybe isn't mainstream. I know you know who he is, but
So Anthony Green, what is he? Is he Circa?
you know, from It for Circus Survive and was in a band called
Say
Sayison
love
before that.
Sayison. Yeah, yeah.
Um, but a lot of, you know, that's not, you don't hear Circus Survive on the radio. So that was always the thing. My family would be like, "Oh, you're signed, but I don't see you on TV or anything." And
Yeah.
it's like, well, there's a whole living wage out there for people who don't make it to that level that are doing just fine. You know, that
Yeah.
can pack out a 2,000 cap venue every night and sell a bunch of merch, and they're making a great living just touring, playing. You know, they're on a bus, they're just not on the radio. But
So let's talk about that a little bit longer. So Far Less. Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys were based out of Greensboro. Is that correct?
no, we were actually so. I was in a band called The Necessary, which then basically became House of Fools.
Okay.
And then I went back to school when they started doing House of Fools because it was kind of a significant shift in style. And so I went back to school and we were buddies with Far Less. And Far Less lost their drummer and asked me to join. But we were kind of stationed in Blacksburg.
Okay.
But ironically, Greensboro was like our hometown. Like our hometown shows were played in Greensboro at Green Street.
Where else in Greensboro? Like, was it Ace's Basement? Was a spot?
Aces was the spot, and then Joe Ferguson, who started Aces, he went and started doing the shows at Green Street to get a bigger stage, bigger capacity, and that was basically it until I guess Blonde Tiger opened up. But I mean the new Blonde Tiger, but until that happened, I mean it was or once that had happened, it felt like so much time had passed that I didn't feel connected to that scene anymore. Because something that was really cool was when we signed to Tooth and Nail, which was a major independent label. You know, like a lot of bands just geeked at the fact that we were signed to that label. But what was really awesome at that time, the Ace's Basement period, is when there was like, I think there was like 6 or 7 major independent bands between here and Wilmington, and we were all like buddies at that point because we were all in the same trenches, I guess. But I mean, you had like us, like you had Far Less, House of Fools, Mercy Mercedes, Farewell, Between the Buried and Me, He Is Legend, Code 7, like and other Box Bomb, Blank Face. I mean, they're slightly different eras. Classic Case. All of those were all signed to major indie labels, and they're all within like an hour and a half of each other. And that's just insane to me because that wasn't happening at that rate in like New York City or LA.
Yeah.
At that point in time, you know, and this was all just mid North Carolina, basically. And it was just a crazy time. But at that time, we didn't have all this. I mean, it's just MySpace. Like, we didn't have smartphones and all the marketing that we had now. So no one really realized the significance of what was going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's cool. So thanks for sharing all that. I'm sure we could chat about music all day. I know me and you have. And so switching gears on you a little bit, you're from Greensboro, and I'm curious, like you're a pretty straightforward guy. How do you feel about Greensboro as a city, and if there's anything that you feel like we could change as a positive, what would it be?
Yeah, I personally love Greensboro. I was born here. I'm very well traveled, so I'm not someone who was afraid to get out of my bubble.
Mm-hmm.
I just always called this home base because my entire life it continued to grow. And, you know, in my real estate work, that's something I tell clients that are moving here from out of town. I always say what I love about Greensboro is it's big enough and it's small enough. And, you know, big enough for like bigger city activities. I mean, the Coliseum, I didn't know this, but the Greensboro Coliseum is the number 7 largest indoor arena in the world.
I did not know that either.
In the world, not a stadium, but, you know, arena. Number 7, very searchable. I didn't believe it when someone mentioned it to me, and I looked it up. I was like, damn, Sure enough is. So that's why we get a lot of the big concerts
Yeah.
that don't go to PNC because there's 2,500 extra tickets they can sell here.
Wow.
And so you get some of that, but it's small enough for people like you and I that are very community oriented and driven with that to be a figure here, you know, to be recognized, to have like a role in your community and not just be amongst a sea of people like in a major market. And, you know, I dig that. And then if you want to go get a taste of a big market, you're an hour, hour and a half away from Charlotte or Raleigh. Take your pick, you know, so you can go dip your toe in that water, you know. But here, I've just enjoyed how central it is, the constant
Did you
growth.
say central or sensual?
Sensual. It's a sensual city.
Central
Everything
city.
feels so good here. No, it's you know, it's like you're like dead center, and you can go Winston, you can go, you know, you can kind of scoot out wherever you want without it being a huge deal, and to be, I don't know, 2.5, 3 hours away from beautiful beaches or beautiful mountains is pretty unique, you know.
Absolutely.
So I've just always kind of stayed here, and I think it's a special place with the figures that are here too, like the people. There's a lot of talent, kind of piggybacking off of what I was talking about. Like there's a lot of talent, and it's like the kind of talent you would see in major markets doing a lot of things. I mean, people like Brian Lewis, aka Jex, my good friend, who's now a international painter, you know, like muralist that everyone knows. And we cut our teeth playing drums together in Ace's basement. You know, you see a lot of that stuff start to flourish, and it's like I could move anywhere. I've been all across the country. I've seen some wonderful places, but it's like, but I wouldn't have all of that. You know, you have to start over, and good luck finding that somewhere else. You know,
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and back to the music, I've always feel like we've had a really good music scene too. Just live music, pop in places like now, you know, back in the day it was different, but now, you know, going to Joymongers on any night, somebody's playing live music and it's good.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think about people like, you know, I don't know him that well, but like I always love seeing Jay Timber doing his thing around and whatnot. And
JT's like my little brother.
yeah.
He was one that just like came up watching us all play and was like always in front of the stage, just geeking. And I loved it because it was like, I was like that to other people. It's a generational flip that happens. You know, you have a younger crew that comes in under you and they're just like, oh, you're so cool. And it's like, no, I'm not. And then someone will do it. Someone inevitably does that to JT, I'm sure. You know, watches him like, God, that guy's so cool. You know,
He is cool, man. His vibe is awesome. So now you've done that. We know you're a real estate agent. We won't talk about that. I really don't want to talk about real estate on this podcast. But you do work for the firm for us. We love having you there. You're an incredible individual. You're also a teacher and a photographer. So let's spend some time on that. And, you know, how'd you get into that? And where do you teach? And tell us about that.
Cool. Yeah. So after I was done touring, playing music, I went back to college to finish my degree. And I wanted something that was practical but creative. So I started studying graphic design. Part of my fine arts curriculum at UNCG was film and darkroom photography. So I started doing that. Was instantly kind of smitten with it. And then it immediately became my focus, no pun intended. But I had to stop. Well, I finished the graphic design program too. I basically have 2 fine arts degrees, one concentration in graphic design, one in photography. Even though I technically can't claim both, I took all the courses, so whatever. They can't stop me from saying that. But then as the photography opportunities really just started pouring in, and I was just learning on the go and just working my ass off and doing everything, taking every opportunity I could to figure out, you know, find my footing in that industry. And it just became a thing. I still do it today. I'm just way more selective about what I'll take on. Like I'll shoot like ACC tournament games or things like that for Triad City Beat. But
yeah, some of the pictures I've seen, like you've shot the Eagles before?
Yeah, Eagles, Foo Fighters, 21 Pilots.
One of my personal faves.
A bunch. I mean, like T.I. I was trying to think, what is some of the... Oh, Roger Waters from Pink Floyd. That was huge for me. That one was like It's very
And these were all
surreal.
at the Coliseum, right? In
Yeah.
Greensboro? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I stay on those become like a baseball card collection to me. So none of those jobs are high paying. They don't need you there. You know, it's
Yeah.
just a cool opportunity. And you take all these shots and you just have like your own baseball card collection of experiences that you can visually show people and say, yeah, I was there, shot this, shot that, whatever.
On that note, talking to high price and photography, I think it was on Facebook the other day. You made an announcement that you were just done with weddings.
Yeah.
And is that because you just don't enjoy them? You didn't like to pay? Bridezilla, Groomzilla?
I mean, you get a little bit of all of that. Like I've definitely had some bridezillas. Like when I was doing weddings for the public, you get in some really awkward positions. Like I no joke had a wedding that I shot one time at Casa McCullough and out in Jamestown. And they had decided they were getting divorced before the reception even ended. And it was insane. It was like,
wait.
Yeah.
Was it one of those situations where they waited to be together until the wedding and then afterwards they were like, nah, this just isn't
it was
gonna work?
basically like everything was cool. And then there was a squabble about who should give toasts. I'll put it that way without disclosing too much and calling any of that out. But yeah, by the end of the night, it was so crazy. The DJ's still playing music, and Team Bride is on this side of the room, Team Groom's on this side, and they're all huddled around, just like conspiring. And the DJ's over there awkwardly playing like songs and nodding his head, but nobody's dancing. it was like stuff like that. And there's so much work. Weddings is so much work and so much time, and I'm a guy that has like 10 irons in the fire already, and
Yeah.
I just for what fraction of income they provide for me, I was just kind of done. They're just so stressful. It's because it takes like a month plus to go through everything
Yeah.
and to package them, and then you send them to them, and no matter what you send somebody, they're like, "Do you have one of this? Do you have one?" And they want you to go back and look again. You know, it's like all that kind of stuff. I'm like, just finally at the point, I'll give them to my students, which we were about to mention, but I was a professor at UNCG for a little bit, but I've also been at GTCC teaching the photography classes out there I'm going on 7 years now. I've been out there doing that, but I love to teach. I kind of keep that going as a matter of the heart because it's a really cool relationship that I build with these kids and some adults. I have some adult students that are my age or older sometimes, but seeing them kind of latch on to it, and then they love to send me like DMs and like, look at this photo I got today. You know, they're all stoked about it. That's really cool. It's hard to replace that, and that's not entirely financially motivated at all. You know, really, it's just I just like doing it. You know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're kind of guiding me to one of my last questions here. You do so much, and I've seen you do so much at a high level. We make the jokes like, hey, damn, does Todd ever even sleep? Like, what's he doing now? But out of all the stuff you do and all the lives you impact, what would you say like your favorite thing is? It sounds like maybe teaching.
Oh man, that's really difficult. Most fulfilling would be teaching.
Okay.
Thing I enjoy the most, I think, will always kind of be music, but that's not really my occupation anymore.
Yeah.
But it'll always be my greatest love. It's hard for me to consider my life without some sort of music involved in it. Like I've been producing and doing things like that in my quote unquote spare time, but that's just me keeping the hook set a little bit, but I'm not out peddling it and trying to pay my bills with it. That's just something I like to do. But I mean, ultimately, that's the thing. People, when they tell me, they're like, it's so abnormal to do all the stuff that you do. And I'm like, I just really don't see it like that. It's not some weird gift that I have. And I think the biggest thing, I tell my students this all the time, is that I'm not afraid to be terrible at anything. And that's where I think people don't realize their abilities because they try something and they're awful at it. And they're like, well, that's just not for me.
Yeah.
And everything that I do, I was awful at when I started, you know? But you have to work through that and
Except being bald. You've been good at
No,
that
I
for a
was
long
really
time.
good at being bald from the start, but that's
Yeah.
because I have an immaculately shaped head. But yeah, you just have to you have to dive into stuff and take your lumps. I mean, you think about working in real estate. I mean, that is an extremely overwhelming industry to get into.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything you do is the biggest financial move of that person's life, and you're steering the ship basically, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you start out, it's just like, oh, you're just frozen because of the magnitude of it.
Yeah.
Now we're not because we have hundreds of transactions behind us, but we had to take our lumps. We had to get caught in positions where we looked like a dumbass because we had to learn that. And it's no different whether it's photography, sports, teaching, anything. I mean, you got to take them on the chin every once in a while and realize why that happened and get better. And then you improve, you make progress. If you dedicate time to anything consistently, you get tremendously better at it.
It's cool to hear you say that, and consistent 2 episodes in a row now, and both folks have talked about not being afraid to fail and learning from failure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. I mean, I'll take it back to this podcast. I've wanted to do this for 2 years, and I was like, man, nobody's really going to listen to what I have to say. I want to be authentic. I want to be this. I want it to be that. And every time I started putting all this on paper, it was like, oh, this is going to suck or you're going to fail. Just don't do it. And so I mean, you just got to do it. It'll get better.
Yep. You gotta dive in. And I'm a big, something that I learned in school, they call it, you may be familiar, some are, some aren't, but it's called the 10,000 hour rule. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of him as far as real estate. Yeah. On a mastery level type thing.
It's basically, in its essence, is to consider yourself a master of your craft, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You have to invest 10,000 hours into it. And I think the gist of it is who the hell is going to track 10,000 hours worth of dedication. I think it's you have to go and do it and, immerse yourself in that, and you will get better and become a master of it eventually, but.
So have you thought about, just adding motivational speaking to the plethora of things that you involve yourself in? Because I think I would pay to hear you give a motivational speech on any topic, even if somebody just made it up right on the spot. I think you could do it.
I've done some public speaking appearances, but I've never really pursued it. You want to talk about something that's terrifying. That's crazy. The scariest thing I ever did, though, I will say, is the first time I ever did stand up.
Oh, I didn't even know you did stand up.
Yeah, I did it. I did it at an open mic at the Idiot Box. Shout out Jenny Stencil.
Jenny.
And I went out there the first time I did it because everyone had told me when I was on tour and all that, they're like, oh man, you should do stand up. You should do stand up, blah, blah, blah. And so I did it for the first night at this. It was like a packed open mic that I went to. And I told 2 of my best friends, Josh King and Wilson Helms. I didn't tell anyone else. And the reason for that is because I wanted to know what people who didn't know me at all thought of my humor just right out of the gate, first impression. And I made all these notes because stand-up comedians, they make notes and they put the little key points on paper I've learned, and they stick it on top of those stools. So when you watch a stand-up and they're laughing and doing that dry walk back to the stool, they're actually looking to be like, what's next?
Yeah.
To remind themselves, and they have a sip of water or whatever, and they come back. I did that and went up, and my hands were shaking so bad that I couldn't even read my notes. I was so terrified. It was so different from being on stage playing music. I've played shows in front of I think the biggest one I've ever done was 8,000 plus people in Boston, and that's got a weight to it. But then I sit behind my drums and I play, and I can at least hide behind the music a little bit,
Yeah.
But when you do stand up, it's you hold a mic and it's here we go.
Yeah.
And that scared me to death. But that was worse than public speaking. But the public speaking went well. I just talked to high schoolers because I think I resonate well with high schoolers because I do a lot of stuff they think is cool. You know, like I couldn't go to like a nursing home and inspire anybody because they're like, oh, punk rock and photographs, you know. So no, I've considered it like doing more of that because I do like to positively impact anyone that I can, you know, and inspire. That's one thing people tell me. They're like, oh, you inspired me to do this or that. And that's always like the greatest compliment to me. But my inspiration came from failure.
Awesome.
I like failed out of school 3 times. And that is like,
Hey, I don't have a college degree either. I actually, this fun fact, I played golf in college. So I was a college athlete and failed PE.
where did you go to college?
High Point University.
That's right. HPE. Yeah.
Yeah, so was started, went to every tournament, traveled as a freshman, failed PE. That's one of my big awakenings in life. Like how can you be so ridiculous to fail PE as a college athlete? But thank you for sharing that. So we'll end on this. You talked about doing stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
I had no idea you had ever done that. So one, just real quick, favorite stand-up comedian?
Ooh. Probably Anthony Jeselnik
Okay.
right now. I like him a lot. I like Nate a lot as well.
Dude, Nate's hilarious. My wife loves him.
I love him because I usually don't like clean comedians. It just doesn't hit the same, but he's so good with it.
Yeah.
Like I'd take him over Jim Gaffigan all day.
His delivery is like just to me
It's so
insane.
good. His timing is great. Of course, Dave Chappelle, always going to be up there. But yeah, I think Jeselnik because he's so dark and it's like he's gonna go dark on every joke, but you don't know where he's going, and it is just. I went and saw him actually at a pretty small show in Raleigh this past year with Jonathan Jay Timber, and yeah, it was just incredible watching him. I was like, this dude's the best. But yeah, probably him or Nate right now are 2 of my favorites.
Yeah, Nate's good for sure. He's coming around here soon, I think.
Is he?
Either Raleigh or Greensboro, maybe like next year at some point.
I have no idea. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I think it's in June of next year. I can't remember. So, do you remember any of your old jokes?
Yeah, but I don't know that they're like safe for presentation on this. I got kind of.
I mean, I can change. You know, this episode can be I can change whatever. This show is not going to be for the kids, although we might positively impact them at times. But let's hear it, man. Go ahead.
I think. Well, I remember I talked. It went really well. First of all, that first time, but a couple things I talked about. How movies dictate the way that we think about the world. So it was kind of like if a T-Rex came back for any reason. We all assume that they can't see us if we're not moving because we watched that movie.
Yeah.
And so I was just made a joke about how we'd all be standing around still and this T-Rex would come and just destroy all of us because we're just hold still. Just come through like low-hanging fruit and it's like, I saw Jurassic Park. I know how this goes. Yeah. And talked about Christmas songs, how they're truly like out of season for most of the country. You know, because a lot of them are like winter songs more than Christmas songs, talking about sleigh rides and snow and everything. And we're down here in North Carolina. It's like, actually, it's 72 and rainy today. So kind of talk about all that, you know, like the presentation is different when you're in a stand-up setting rather than
certainly discussing
it. But and then I went on like sex jokes and, you know, humiliate yourself a little bit. But I think the biggest thing, I started it by saying, my entire life, everybody has pushed me to do stand-up. So this is me finally following my calling. So please do not fuck this up for me. that was the first line, and everyone started laughing. I was like, okay, we're gonna be all right. And then I just just riffed, you know. So
yeah,
it was good, and it's it's fun to write that stuff. You just make a whole kind of list of it. And you flow into different topics. It's an art form itself. I haven't done it in a while. I might need to try to book something sometime soon. But
do it. Why not?
Yeah.
I'll be your hype man. I'll get up there and hype you up.
Yeah, you can come be like the fluff guy.
I'll fluff you. I'll be your fluffer.
Verbally, please.
Sorry for that. Well, I will wrap up, man. I appreciate you filling in and coming. And I know I say that. I don't think of you as a fill-in at all. Like when I started doing this and started thinking about what I wanted it to be, like, and people have asked me like, what's the goal? What's this? And it's just like, to your point, I think we have some incredible people in the city of Greensboro, yourself included. And not everybody gets to hear your story. Like I've known you for a long time and I forgot that you played football. I had no idea you did stand-up comedy. And to get your perspective on Greensboro, the music scene, I didn't know we had that many sign labels. And as you know, I'm really into that genre of music. And so we appreciate you just spending some time with us, telling you a little bit about yourself. I get to see you every day in the real estate landscape. But thank you again.
And I get to see you on the golf course where you embarrass me frequently.
Sometimes.
This dude's like the best golfer in the triad.
No, not at all.
Like when we go to play Captain's Choice tournaments, everybody just kind of shivers when we get out of the car.
I don't know about that. Maybe at one point
They
in
do.
life. Not anymore.
They wet themselves.
Not anymore. But,
no, right, man. Thanks for having me. It's been great. And you're right. There's no shortage of extraordinary people in this area. So keep doing what you're doing, and more people will tune in and follow the journey. So,
yeah,
like you said, just got to do it.
Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, be sure to follow our page on YouTube, and we'll just try to keep episodes coming. Again, thanks to Todd Turner. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode.